On the morning of October 17, 1954, the luxury cruise liner SS Celestial Voyager drifted into the port of New Orleans with no one on board. No passengers, no crew, just silence. The ship's log ended mid-sentence. Lifeboats remained untouched, and yet 400 souls had vanished without a trace. No distress calls, no wreckage. Just an empty ship gliding into harbor like a ghost. For decades, officials buried the truth. Classified documents, silenced witnesses, and a cover-up so vast it spanned 3 governments. But tonight, we reveal what really happened on that doomed voyage. This story isn't for the faint of heart. Only those brave enough to follow the trail of missing passengers into the darkest depths of the sea. So tell me, where are you watching from? Because the truth is far more horrifying than anyone imagined. The docks of New Orleans were never silent. Even in the earliest hours before dawn, the port hummed with the low churn of boat engines, the distant shouts of fishermen, the creak of ropes straining against wooden pilings. But on the morning of October 17, 1954, the harbor fell still. A shape emerged from the mist, a great hulking silhouette gliding soundlessly toward the shore. No alarms sounded, no tugboats rushed to meet it. The SS Celestial Voyager, a luxury ocean liner carrying 400 souls, had returned from its transatlantic voyage exactly on schedule. Yet as the first dock workers approached, their lanterns casting long shadows across the deck, they realized something was wrong. No one came to greet them. No crew lined the rails, no laughter or music drifted from the portholes. Only the ship's horn, groaning once in the thick air, broke the silence. When the boarding party stepped onto the deck, their footsteps echoed like they were walking through a tomb. The ship was immaculate, no signs of struggle, no overturned chairs, no lifeboats deployed. The dining tables were still set for dinner, wine glasses half full, napkins folded neatly beside cold plates. In the ballroom, a record had been left spinning on the phonograph, the needle stuck in an endless whispering loop of static. The cabins told the same story. Suitcases lay unpacked, jewelry and watches sat on nightstands. A child's doll slumped against a pillow, as if its owner had simply gotten up and walked away. But the passengers, the laughing newlyweds, the retired school teachers, the wealthy industrialists, were gone. The ship's logbook was found open on the bridge, the final entry written in the captain's steady hand, weather clear, course steady. All passengers accounted for. If we do not arrive as scheduled, I fear. The sentence ended there. By noon, the authorities arrived. Police, Coast Guard, men in dark suits who spoke in hushed tones and carried away documents in sealed briefcases. The official statement was brief, no signs of foul play, no evidence of piracy or mutiny. An investigation is underway, but behind closed doors, the whispers began. Ships didn't just empty themselves. People didn't vanish into thin air. Yet that's exactly what happened. 400 people, gone, without a single scream, without a single trace. And the most chilling question of all, the Celestial Voyager wasn't the first ship to arrive this way, and it wouldn't be the last. The SS Celestial Voyager had been hailed as the height of modern luxury, a floating palace of polished mahogany, crystal chandeliers, and first-class suites with private balconies overlooking the sea. When it departed Southampton on October 8, 1954, the mood was jubilant. Passengers toasted with champagne as streamers fluttered from the railings, the ship's horn blaring a final farewell before the open ocean swallowed the shoreline. Among the passengers were newlyweds Arthur and Margaret Holloway, beaming in their matching linen suits, their cabin filled with wedding gifts still wrapped in crisp paper. In the dining saloon, retired schoolteacher Eleanor Whitaker scribbled excited notes in her travel journal. "The sea is so blue it hurts my eyes." While 2 decks below, a group of college students played poker, their laughter echoing through the corridors. The crew, too, were in high spirits. Captain Edward Vance, a seasoned mariner with 30 years of experience, had logged over 100 crossings without incident. His last entry in the ship's log was routine: clear skies, calm seas, and an estimated arrival in New Orleans on schedule. Even the ship's doctor, Leonard Hayes, remarked to the purser that it was the healthiest voyage he'd ever worked. No seasickness, no quarantines, not so much as a sprained ankle among the passengers. But there were small, unsettling details, things that would only seem significant later. A night watchman reported hearing faint, metallic knocking from deep within the ship's hull on the 3rd night, though engineers found nothing amiss. A first-class passenger, industrialist Howard Grayson, abruptly canceled his nightly cognac with the captain. claiming he felt watched in his suite. And on October 12, a radio operator intercepted a strange burst of static-laden transmission, just 3 garbled words, "They're underneath us." When questioned, the operator dismissed it as interference. Ships often picked up odd signals at sea. The last confirmed sighting of any passenger was on the evening of October 15th. A steward delivering a late-night pot of tea to Margaret Holloway noted she seemed distracted, her fingers tapping nervously against the balcony railing as she stared into the dark water below. "Do you ever feel like the ocean is waiting?" she asked, before shaking her head with an uneasy laugh. "Never mind, just the nerves of a first voyage, I suppose." By dawn, her cabin was empty. The final radio transmission from the Celestial Voyager came at 2:17 a.m. on October 16, a brief, calm message from Captain Vance to a nearby cargo vessel, all is well, proceeding as scheduled. 12 hours later, the ship's engines still humming, its lights still burning, it crossed into the port of New Orleans with no one left aboard to steer it, and not a single soul could say where they had gone. The first 3 days of the voyage passed without incident, just the gentle sway of the ship, the endless blue horizon, and the carefree rhythm of life at sea. Passengers lounged on deck chairs, sipped cocktails in the Grand Salon, and danced to the ship's orchestra each evening. But on the 4th night something changed. It began with the dogs. 3 first-class passengers had brought their pets aboard, a dachshund, a collie, and a terrier, all well-trained, docile animals. Yet around midnight on October 11, they began to whimper, then howl, their ears pinned back as if struck by some sound only they could hear. The terrier, normally friendly, bared its teeth at the empty corridor outside its owner's cabin. The ship's staff dismissed it as storm nerves, though the sea was calm. Then came the knocking. Engineer Robert Langford was the first to report it, a slow, rhythmic tapping against the hull deep below the waterline. Not the usual creaks of a ship at sea, but something deliberate. Knock, 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 like fingers drumming against metal. He and 2 other crewmen descended into the cargo hold with lanterns, scanning the dark compartments for the source. The sound stopped the moment they stepped inside. The hold was empty, except for the smell. Langford would later describe it in his official statement like wet copper, like something had been stored down there. But we checked every crate. Nothing was out of place. By morning, the incident was forgotten. But that same day, 3 passengers, an elderly widow, a businessman, and a young actress, complained of the same nightmare. A figure standing at the foot of their beds, its face obscured by shadows, its hands dripping with seawater. They had never met. They described the same thing. Then the radio silence. The Celestial Voyager maintained strict communication schedules, sending routine updates to coastal stations. But on October 13th, the radio operator James Whittaker noticed something strange, interference on every frequency, as if the airwaves themselves were being choked. Then, at 3:04 a.m., the receiver crackled to life with a voice that didn't belong to any ship. A man, whispering, "They're in the walls." Whittaker spun the dial, checking for crosstalk, but the frequency was clear. When he reported it to the first officer, he was told to stop jumping at ghosts. But the disturbances grew worse. Passengers began reporting misplaced belongings, a hairbrush found in the hallway, a wedding ring left on a dining table, a child's doll propped up in the library, its glassy eyes staring at the door. Crew members swapped stories of footsteps following them in empty corridors, of cabin doors found ajar when no one had entered. Then, on the night of October 15th, the ship's doctor was summoned to Howard Grayson's suite. The industrialist had locked himself inside, screaming about things in the mirrors. When the doctor arrived, Grayson was crouched in the corner, his fingers bleeding from where he'd clawed at the wallpaper. "They're peeling it back," he whispered. "The paint, the wood, they're coming through." The doctor sedated him. By morning, Grayson was gone. His bed was neatly made, his suitcase was packed, but he had vanished, along with the steward who had last seen him. The captain ordered a full ship search. They found nothing, no signs of struggle, no evidence of anyone overboard, just an eerie stillness, as if the Celestial Voyager itself was holding its breath. The final radio transmission would go out that night, and after that, silence. The first distress call never came. When the SS Celestial Voyager failed to send its scheduled position update on the morning of October 16th, the maritime authorities assumed radio malfunction. By afternoon, when repeated hails went unanswered, The U.S. Coast Guard dispatched the cutter Hamilton to intercept the liner's last known coordinates. They found nothing. No wreckage, no oil slicks, no lifeboats bobbing in the waves. Just an empty stretch of ocean where a 650-foot luxury vessel should have been. Then, 31 hours later, the impossible happened. The Celestial Voyager materialized off the Louisiana coast, its running lights still glowing, its engines idling, drifting like a phantom toward New Orleans. The first boarding party from the Coast Guard would later describe the scene in heavily redacted reports. No signs of violence, no mechanical failure, all systems operational. One officer's handwritten note, later confiscated, read simply, "Ship is breathing." By dawn, men in black suits arrived from Washington. They sealed the vessel, interrogated the dock workers, and, most tellingly, confiscated the ship's log and radio equipment. The official statement released to newspapers was a masterclass in bureaucratic calm. All passengers and crew presumed lost at sea during unforeseen circumstances. No further comment pending investigation. But the documents tell a different story. A classified memo between the Coast Guard and the Department of Commerce, unearthed decades later, contained a single alarming line. "This matches the Aurora incident of 1932. Recommend same protocol." The Aurora, a merchant vessel that had drifted into San Francisco Bay with all hands missing in eerily similar fashion, had been quietly scuttled by the Navy after its discovery. Now, the same machinery lurched into motion. Passenger manifests disappeared from shipping company archives. Families received identical, suspiciously worded telegrams: "Your loved ones perished honorably in maritime tragedy. Compensation enclosed." Most damningly, the ship's physician, Dr. Hayes, who had stayed ashore with pneumonia, was found dead in his hotel room 2 days after the Voyager's return. The coroner ruled it a heart attack. His notebook was missing. Journalists who dug too deep met resistance. Miami Herald reporter Jack Pulaski was arrested for trespassing when he tried to photograph the impounded vessel. His film was destroyed. The Times-Picayune ran a front-page story about the disappearances, only to print a retraction the next day, citing unverified sources. The most chilling suppression involved the passengers themselves. When Eleanor Whitaker's sister demanded to see her cabin, authorities claimed the entire ship had been sanitized due to biohazard risks. Howard Grayson's business partners were told his body had been recovered at sea, though no such recovery was ever documented. And when the Holloway family's lawyer subpoenaed the ship's security logs, the courtroom records were sealed. By November 1954, the story had vanished from newspapers. The Celestial Voyager was quietly towed to a Navy scrapyard in Norfolk. The official death certificates listed all 400 souls as lost in maritime accident, with a single telling footnote: bodies unrecovered. But in maritime bars from New Orleans to Halifax, the whispers persisted. Crewmen from the Hamilton swore they'd seen faces pressed against the Voyager's portholes as it drifted into port. A customs agent leaked that one first-class cabin had been found filled with 3 inches of salt water and bare footprints leading to the door. And in a final grotesque twist, the ship's butcher came forward in 1971 with a claim so explosive it got him committed. The cold storage lockers, they were full when we docked, full of meat, but we hadn't loaded that much, and it wasn't beef. His psychiatric evaluation deemed him hallucinatory. The evaluation was signed by a doctor who had once worked for the same shipping company that owned the Celestial Voyager. The SS Celestial Voyager was never meant to sail. That's what the shipyard workers muttered when her keel was first laid in 1938 at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, the same yard that built the Titanic. Construction stalled for years, plagued by freak accidents. A crane snapped during her mast installation, crushing 3 laborers. A fire broke out in the engine room before the engines were even installed. When the hull was finally launched in 1946, it slid into the water with eerie silence. No christening bottle shattered against her bow. The ceremony had been canceled after the chosen godmother, a diplomat's wife, drowned in her bathtub the night before. But the Voyager's true curse began with her first incarnation, not as a luxury liner, but as a wartime transport. Originally commissioned as the HMS Persephone, the ship was repurposed during World War II to carry prisoners to internment camps. Survivors' accounts describe a vessel that ate people. In 1943, 73 German POWs vanished from a locked hold during a crossing to Canada. The guards reported hearing scratching all night, then silence at dawn. When the doors were unsealed, the prisoners were gone. Only the stench of brine and a single phrase carved into the bulkhead remained. "They are looking up." The British Admiralty quietly decommissioned the ship after the war. It sat rotting in a Scottish lock until 1951, when American shipping magnate Charles Lockwood purchased it for scrap value. His engineers found something disturbing during the refit: dozens of small, hand-sized holes drilled into the hull below the waterline from the inside. Lockwood pressed ahead. Reborn as the Celestial Voyager, the ship's new luxury veneer couldn't mask its rotten core. During her maiden voyage in 1953, a stewardess threw herself overboard, screaming about faces in the woodwork. That same year, a fire broke out in cabin 317, a room that didn't exist on the ship's blueprints. Most damningly, every crossing saw at least one passenger disappear, not overboard, not left in port, simply gone. The shipping line covered it up, of course. They paid off families. They falsified logs. They reassigned crew members who asked too many questions. But the paper trail reveals chilling patterns. Crossing 12th, April 1954, first-class passenger Daniel Prue vanished from a locked bathroom. His wife insisted she heard him speaking to someone in French before the silence fell. The ship's doctor noted the sink was filled with seawater. Crossing 18th August 1954, 3 children from the nursery deck were reported missing during a storm. Their toys were found arranged in a circle in an empty cargo hold. Final crossing October 1954, the ship's chaplain, Father Callahan, conducted an emergency exorcism 2 nights before the disappearance. His last journal entry: "This vessel is not a ship, it is a throat." The most disturbing revelation comes from maritime historian Dr. Lillian Joe, who uncovered the Voyager's original construction records in 2004. The steel for her hull had been salvaged from a 19th century whaling ship, the Melville, lost in 1888 after its crew went mad and began nailing each other into the walls. The Melville's last log entry matched the Voyager's fate eerily. "They come through the boards at night. We can hear them singing in the timbers. God help us, we should never have taken the metal from that island." That island? A tiny, unnamed atoll in the South Pacific, where the Melville had anchored weeks before its doom. The same atoll, naval records show, that a young Charles Lockwood visited in 1936 while prospecting for manganese. The same atoll where locals claim something lives in the underwater caves, something that follows its metal. When the Celestial Voyager was finally broken up in Norfolk, workers reported nightmares of things moving in the scrap piles. The ship's bell, sent to a maritime museum, rang by itself for 13 nights before being melted down. And in 1998, a diver exploring the scrapyard's underwater debris field surfaced screaming, his wetsuit filled with what he swore were human teeth. Perhaps the Voyager never truly sank. Perhaps it's still out there, drifting, waiting, hungry. Margaret Holloway had packed her favorite perfume, a French violet scent, in her vanity case. She'd dab it on her wrists each evening before joining her new husband Arthur in the dining saloon, where he would always order the same thing: oysters Rockefeller and a gin fizz. They had been married for 11 days when they boarded the Celestial Voyager, their tickets a gift from Arthur's uncle. On the second night, Margaret wrote in her diary, "I keep dreaming of a woman standing at the foot of our bed. She's wearing my wedding ring." The diary was found open on her nightstand, the entry unfinished. In cabin 209, retired schoolteacher Eleanor Whitaker was traveling alone for the first time in her life. At 68, she had saved for decades to take this trip, her steamer trunk packed with detective novels and pressed flowers from her garden. She wrote cheerful postcards to her students back in Vermont, never mailed. One, dated October 14, read, "The strangest thing. I woke last night to find my hair soaked through, as if I'd been swimming." But the bathroom was dry. Howard Grayson occupied the lavish Versailles suite, where he conducted business with a rotating cast of associates. The steel tycoon was rumored to be transporting sensitive documents in a locked briefcase, a fact that later fueled CIA conspiracy theories. His valet reported that on the final night, Grayson demanded all mirrors in the suite be covered with sheets. "They move when I'm not looking," he allegedly muttered. The valet disappeared along with him. Down in third class, 21-year-old musician Tommy Riggs carried his trumpet everywhere, playing jazz standards for tips in the corridors. His last performance was an off-key rendition of Stormy Weather in the lounge on October 15th. A passenger complained he kept staring at the ceiling while playing, as if tracking something moving across it. His trumpet was later found on the deck, the mouthpiece still warm. The ship's staff hid their own secrets. Chief Steward William Carter had served on the Voyager since its maiden voyage. Crew manifests show he requested transfer after each crossing, always denied. His sister later claimed he wrote her a letter in 1953. This ship collects people. Not just the ones who disappear, the ones who stay too, were all becoming part of it. Carter was last seen entering the forward cargo hold with a flashlight. The flashlight was recovered, its lens shattered from the inside. Then there were the children. 7-year-old Susan Mayfield traveled with her governess, clutching a porcelain doll named Miss Lillian. The doll turned up in the ship's library, its face cracked in a scream no doll's mouth could physically form. Twin brothers James and Peter Waltham, age 12, had been caught the day before the disappearance trying to pry up floorboards in their cabin. When questioned, they said they were helping the little man find his way back. Perhaps most tragic was newly hired Nanny Rose Pettigrew, who had boarded in Southampton with no return ticket, a runaway from an abusive home. She wrote her mother a letter she never sent. The children here tell such stories. They say the ship has a brother who swims underneath us. I pretend to laugh. Rose's uniform was found neatly folded in the nursery, a single drop of seawater staining the collar. The passenger manifest tells its own eerie tale. Of the 400 missing, 137 had birthdays in October. 22 shared the surname Hall. 9 were traveling under assumed names, and one, cabin 317's Mr. Smith, left no trace of ever existing beyond a signature on the boarding log, a signature that, under magnification, appears to have been written by multiple hands simultaneously. These weren't just names on a memorial plaque. They were people who laughed over champagne, who argued about politics in the smoking room, who tucked love letters between the pages of library books. People whose last moments were spent staring at portholes gone suddenly black, at cabin walls that breathed, at reflections that moved on their own. Their luggage was eventually returned to families. The suitcases were always lighter than when they'd been packed, as if something had been taken out or let in. The official explanation never sat right with the public. 400 people don't simply vanish without a trace from a fully operational ocean liner. Almost immediately, alternative theories began circulating, some grounded in Cold War paranoia, others veering into the realm of nightmare. The most persistent, that the Celestial Voyager had been the site of a classified government experiment gone horribly wrong. The timing was suspicious. October 1954 fell at the peak of MK-Ultra, the CIA's notorious mind control program. Declassified documents reveal the agency was actively testing hallucinogens and sensory deprivation techniques on unwitting subjects. A heavily redacted memo from that year references maritime environment stress testing and lists a shipping company later revealed to be the Voyager's parent corporation. Then there were the passengers. Howard Grayson wasn't just a steel tycoon. He was a defense contractor with top-secret clearance. Among his luggage was a case stamped Project Blue Horizon, a known CIA front. 2 other passengers worked at Camp Hero, the infamous Montauk military base rumored to house psychic warfare experiments. Most damningly, the ship's doctor, Leonard Hayes, had previously conducted Navy research on aquatic sensory deprivation. His personal notes, recovered from his hotel room after his death, contained a single cryptic line: subjects reporting entity contact at 40 fathoms. Recommend Phase 3 testing aboard moving vessel. Witness accounts fueled the fire. A radio operator in Nassau claimed to have intercepted a panic transmission from the Voyager on October 16th, not in Morse code, but in an obscure Navajo cipher used only by military intelligence. The message repeated one phrase: "The walls are singing." The Coast Guard's response was telling. Instead of standard search patterns, they deployed a specialized Navy sonar array, technology not declassified until 1978. A deckhand on the USS Hamilton later swore they weren't scanning for wreckage but mapping something big moving beneath us. The cover-up was systematic. Within 48 hours of the ship's ghostly return, military police cordoned off the docks. The FBI confiscated passenger medical records. Journalists who inquired about Project Blue Horizon received visits from men in dark suits. Even the weather reports for October 15 to 16 were altered. Original logs showing an anomalous electromagnetic disturbance over the Gulf were replaced with bland entries about mild conditions. The most chilling theory came from Dr. Felix Obermeyer, a former Nazi scientist recruited under Operation Paperclip. In a 1972 Asylum interview, he claimed the Voyager had been testing acoustic dimensional interfacing, using specific sound frequencies to open thresholds. The Americans thought they could control it, he whispered, but the things on the other side, they were waiting. They'd been waiting since the Melville. His notes included schematics matching the Voyager's hull design, with strange resonating chambers built into the keel. Physical evidence supports the theory. When the ship was scrapped, workers reported finding odd copper coils welded to the inner hull, not part of any known maritime technology. More disturbing were the growths discovered in the bilge, barnacle-like incrustations that, under microscopy, appeared to contain human dental fragments. The families were stonewalled. Eleanor Whitaker's niece, a congressional aide, spent years petitioning for records. In 1987, she received a single heavily redacted page, a 1954 memo from the Office of Naval Intelligence with the heading Celestial Incidents Containment Protocols. The sole legible paragraph read, "As with Aurora event, all material must be sanitized to classification level cosmic. Remind personnel that no such testing occurred in civilian maritime zones. Any reference to singing steel or threshold resonance constitutes treason." The most damning testimony came from an unlikely source, a janitor at the Norfolk scrapyard. In 1991, he told paranormal investigators that during the Voyager's dismantling, men in radiation suits removed a section of hull that wouldn't stop vibrating. When touched, it emitted a sound like 100 people screaming through water. The government's final insult? In 2001, the CIA released a heavily sanitized MKUltra document listing maritime test environments. Page 47 shows a ship's deck plan matching the Voyager's layout. Every marked testing location, dining saloon, cabin 317, the forward hold, was where passengers later reported phenomena. The redacted conclusion line reads simply, "Phase 3 subjects demonstrated 100% integration with," the rest is blacked out. But in the margin, some bureaucrat had scribbled a note that slipped past the censors. God help us, they're still broadcasting. For 43 years, Second Steward Daniel Mercer never spoke a word about what happened aboard the Celestial Voyager. Not when the FBI interrogated him, not when grieving families begged for answers, not even when the nightmares woke him screaming about things coming up through the floorboards. But on the evening of September 12, 1997, as lung cancer squeezed the last breaths from his body in a Tampa hospice, Mercer finally broke his silence. His nurse, a woman named Maria Lopez, would swear under oath to what she heard. Mercer had been delirious for days, mumbling about locked doors and wet footprints. That night, he suddenly sat bolt upright, his yellowed eyes clear for the first time in weeks. "They'll kill me for telling," he whispered, "but it's too late now. They can't reach me here." What followed was a torrent of horrors. On October 15th, Mercer had been assigned to deliver extra blankets to first-class cabins. As he passed cabin 317, the room that wasn't on the plans, he heard liquid sloshing behind the door. When he knocked, something heavy dragged across the floor inside. The peephole was dark, but Mercer swore he saw an eye looking back. But wrong, all black like a shark's. He fled, only to encounter 3 children from the nursery deck standing frozen in the corridor. They were just staring at the ceiling. Mercer gasped. Their eyes, Christ, their eyes were full of salt water. The worst came at 1:17 a.m., when Chief Steward Carter ordered Mercer to help secure the forward cargo hold. "The captain said we were taking on water, but that was a lie," Mercer coughed. "The hold was dry, and it was full of—" "Here," Lopez reported. Mercer began shaking violently. "Pods," he finally rasped. "Like cocoons, human-shaped, but made of ship's tar and hair. And they were breathing." According to Mercer, Carter approached one of the pods with a fire axe. "We have to let them out before they—" Then something inside the pod moved. Mercer described a sound like 100 bones snapping at once as the pod split open. What emerged wasn't human. It was wearing First Officer Dunleavy's face, but the skin kept sliding. Carter swung the axe. The thing caught it mid-air with hands that stretched too many joints. Mercer ran. As he burst onto the deck, he saw passengers, dozens of them, standing perfectly still at the railings. They weren't looking at the water, he told Lopez. They were looking up, at something in the rigging, something big. The last thing Mercer saw before losing consciousness was Chief Engineer O'Brien crawling from a ventilation shaft, his mouth sewn shut with fishing line. He kept pointing at the lifeboats, Mercer whispered, not to use them, to show me they were all still there, that whatever took everyone didn't need boats. Mercer woke in a Norfolk hospital 3 days later. His uniform was missing. His personnel file listed him as never aboard. When he tried to contact other survivors, he discovered a chilling pattern. They all died within a year. Car crashes, house fires. One guy drowned in his bathtub, a Navy SEAL. Mercer tapped his oxygen tank. This cancer started the day they made me tour the scrapped hull in '55. I felt it move under my hand. As Lopez called for the doctor, Mercer grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. His final words, "It's still out there, not the ship, what wore the ship, and when it runs out of 55 souls, it'll come back for the rest." The hospice security camera malfunctioned during Mercer's death throes. The audio tape reveals only wet crunching sounds and Lopez screaming, not for help, but for something to get away from the windows. Mercer's body was cremated immediately. The coroner never explained why the ashes weighed 17 pounds more than they should have. The SS Celestial Voyager didn't disappear in the Bermuda Triangle, at least not technically. Its last confirmed position placed it 400 miles northwest of the Triangle's accepted boundaries. But when researchers overlay its route with other ghost ship incidents, an unsettling pattern emerges, a spiderweb of vanishing stretching from the Azores to the Florida Straits, all sharing eerie commonalities. The Aurora, 1932, the Marine Sulphur Queen, 1963, the SS, Cotopaxi, 1925, all found adrift with crews vanished, all reporting strange phenomena before their final transmissions. The Cotopaxi's log contained an entry nearly identical to the Voyager's. They're in the walls. The Sulphur Queen's sole lifeboat was recovered with a single cryptic word carved into its bench, drowning. But the Voyager case differs in chilling ways. Maritime historian Dr. Elias Carter discovered that every ship in this pattern shared one trait. They'd all been built or repaired using steel from a single source, the now defunct Tyneside Metal Works in England. Company records show the steel came from an experimental smelting process using ore mined off the Cape Verde Islands in 1919. The same year, 12 miners vanished from that operation. Their last journal entries mention a city under the dig site and the Singing Rocks. Even more disturbing are the hydrophone recordings. In 1998, NOAA's deep-sea listening arrays captured an anomalous sound near the Voyager's last coordinates, a 37-second pulse matching no known marine phenomenon. When played backward, audio engineers isolated what sounds like a human voice whispering in Latin, "Aperitura terra et germine salvatorem." Let the earth open and bring forth salvation. The same phrase appears in the Melville's recovered log from 1888. Then there are the survivors who shouldn't exist. In 2004, an elderly woman named Miriam Castillo came forward claiming to have been a Voyager passenger. Her story was dismissed until she produced a first-class ticket stub stamped October 15, 1954. She described waking that night to find her cabin flooded ankle-deep, her porthole looking into somewhere else, a place with black reefs and things moving between them. She claimed to have escaped by hiding in a linen closet until the ship docked. The worst part, she told investigators, when they finally opened the closet door, my hair had turned white, and my reflection, it kept moving after I stopped. Miriam disappeared 3 days after giving her statement. Her apartment smelled of salt water, and the bathroom mirror was shattered from the inside. Modern satellite data adds another layer. Scientists studying oceanic electromagnetic anomalies identified a migration pattern, disturbances moving along the Gulf Stream at precise 23-year intervals. The Voyager vanished during a peak year. So did Flight 19 in 1945. The next predicted peak, 2024. Perhaps most damning is what divers found in 2012. Exploring a supposed ship graveyard near Andros Island, a NOAA team discovered a debris field containing brass fixtures stamped CV, Celestial Voyager, but the wreckage dated to T-1987 and 33 years after the ship was supposedly scrapped. The dive camera captured something else too, a massive shadowed shape moving beneath them at depths no ship could reach. When enhanced, the silhouette matches no known marine life, but it does resemble something. In the Voyager's engine room, workers found strange scratches on the bulkheads, not random, but forming repeating symbols. When compared to ancient Phoenician wreck markings, they translate to a warning: beware those who sleep in the deep. The Bermuda Triangle theory is comforting. It suggests a boundary, rules, a place where the abnormal stays contained. The truth is worse, because whatever took the Celestial Voyager isn't confined to any triangle. It's still moving, still hunting, and the steel it rides in now could be beneath your feet, in bridges, skyscrapers, perhaps even the ship you'll board next year. After all, the Melville's logs weren't entirely accurate. That island where they mined the cursed ore? It sank in 1891. But the mining never stopped. The SS Celestial Voyager was officially scrapped in 1955, but sightings began the following year. In March 1956, a Pan Am flight over the Bahamas reported a phantom luxury liner drifting with no lights. When Coast Guard vessels reached the coordinates, they found only an oil slick that smelled inexplicably of violets, Margaret Holloway's signature perfume. The encounters grew stranger. In 1978, the freighter Atlantic Dawn nearly collided with an unidentified ship near the Voyager's last known position. The captain's frantic mayday described a 1930s ocean liner with passengers lining the rails. Radar showed nothing. But when divers later inspected the Dawn's hull, they found fresh scratches 30 feet above the waterline, as if something had climbed up. Then came the digital age. In 2007, Google Earth briefly showed an anomaly at 28°14' N, 80°28' W, a ship-shaped blur matching the Voyager's dimensions. The image was deleted within hours, but not before maritime forums noticed something chilling. The blur's wake showed it moving against prevailing currents. Survivors' descendants report nightmares. Sarah Whitaker, Eleanor's great-niece, began sleepwalking in 2012, always drawn to the family's old steamer trunk. One morning they found it filled with seawater and a single artifact, a Voyager dinner menu dated October 15, 1954. The ink was still wet. Most disturbing are the returnees. In 1999, Tampa hospice nurses documented a dementia patient who spoke perfect 1950s diction and claimed to be Howard Grayson. He accurately described the Voyager's Versailles suite before screaming about the teeth in the mirrors. Security footage shows his IV bags inexplicably filling with salt water before his death. Then there are the ships that never learn. The cruise liner Pacific Dream reported a mutiny in 2015 when 47 passengers simultaneously claimed to see a ghost ship passing alongside. Security cameras malfunctioned, but cell phone footage captured something impossible, a reflection in the Dream's windows showing an antique ocean liner where none existed. The footage's metadata placed the phantom ship's position exactly where the Voyager should have been, had it never stopped moving. Modern technology only deepens the mystery. In 2021, an AI analyzing maritime disappearances identified a pattern. Every 23 years, ships report malfunctioning compasses along a spreading path radiating from the Voyager's 1954 coordinates. The next predicted spike? October 2024, 70 years to the day since the disappearance. Perhaps most chilling is what divers found in 2020. Exploring a World War II wreck off Key West, a team discovered modern artifacts impossibly lodged in the seafloor, a Voyager life preserver dated 1954, yet made of materials not invented until the 1990s. When touched, their GoPro captured audio no human ear had heard, hundreds of whispering voices saying we're still sailing in perfect unison. The Celestial Voyager may be the most documented ghost ship in history, yet authorities refuse to investigate. The Coast Guard's official stance remains case closed, despite 400 unresolved missing persons. Maritime insurers quietly pay claims to families who report Voyager-related phenomena, always with strict non-disclosure agreements. But the sea keeps giving up its secrets. In 2023, beachgoers at Cape Hatteras found a brass ship's bell half buried in the sand. When cleaned, it revealed the Voyager's name and fresh fingerprints in the patina. The prints matched those of Daniel Mercer, who had been cremated 26 years earlier. Whatever took those 400 souls never let them go. And if the patterns hold, it's almost time for the Voyager to collect again. Check your reflection twice tonight. Is it blinking when you don't? After 70 years of silence, classified documents, and whispered sailors' tales, the truth about the Celestial Voyager can finally be pieced together. Not from any single theory, but from the terrifying intersection of them all. a mosaic of maritime history, military experiments, and something far older lurking beneath human understanding. The most plausible explanation begins with the ship itself. The Voyager was built with cursed steel, this much we know. Salvaged from the doomed whaler Melville, the metal carried some primal contamination from whatever that 19th century crew discovered near Cape Verde. Naval archives confirm the Melville's logs weren't entirely metaphorical when they wrote of singing rocks and things moving through the hull. 20th century sonar would later identify vast, hollow structures beneath that island's submerged ruins, structures that pulsed at precise intervals matching the Voyager's final distress calls. But the steel was just the vessel. The real horror began with Project Blue Horizon. Declassified MKUltra subfiles revealed the CIA had been testing acoustic weapons since 1951, attempting to weaponize infrasound, frequencies below human hearing that can induce terror, paralysis, or worse. Howard Grayson wasn't just transporting documents, he was overseeing an onboard experiment using the ship's unique steel as a resonance chamber. The goal? To open what researchers called acoustic windows, temporary breaches in perceived reality. It worked too well. Eyewitness accounts from Mercer and others describe phenomena matching infrasound exposure, waking nightmares, phantom figures, and the unbearable sense of being watched. But something else happened when those frequencies interacted with the Voyager's tainted steel. It didn't just affect minds, it vibrated in harmony with something already there, something that had been sleeping in the deep since long before the Melville disturbed it. The pods Mercer saw weren't experiments, they were cocoons. Marine biologists confirm certain deep-sea species use parasitic reproduction, hijacking larger organisms as incubators. Applied to the Voyager incident, this suggests a chilling sequence. The ship's resonance woke dormant entities attached to the steel. These entities, whether physical, interdimensional, or something in between, began repurposing passengers as hosts. The final transmissions there underneath us wasn't a metaphor. The things were literally beneath the floorboards, growing inside the walls until October 16, 1954. The culmination. Every 23 years, oceanic electromagnetic readings spike along the Voyager's last route. Not random anomalies, but a cycle. The same interval appears in Phoenician wreck markings and Melville crew diaries. These entities don't just take, they return. This explains the lack of lifeboat usage. The transformed didn't need to flee. They walked into the water, just as the Melville's crew described. The government cover-up, not to hide incompetence, but to contain the realization that certain patches of ocean are alive in ways we cannot control. Modern sightings, the Voyager wasn't scrapped, it was quarantined, and sometimes the steel remembers. The most damning evidence comes from an unlikely source, the 2023 DNA analysis of those barnacles from the hull. They weren't sea growths at all, but keratin-based structures resembling human fingernails, genetically matching multiple Voyager passengers, as if the ship itself had become a living tomb. Yet the ultimate horror isn't what happened in 1954. It's the pattern. The Aurora 1932, the Voyager 1954, the Lyubov Orlova 2013. Each disappearance occurred during oceanic EM spikes. Each vessel contained anomalous steel, and each left behind returnees with saltwater hallucinations. The intervals are accelerating. The next peak? October 2024. Exactly 70 years, 3 full cycles, since the Celestial Voyager became a ghost ship. The same month, multiple cruise lines have reported compass malfunctions near Andros Island. The same seasoned fishermen are catching tuna with teeth that match no known species. The official documents will never admit it, but the equation is clear. Cursed steel plus acoustic tampering plus ancient deep-sea intelligence equal to a door that won't stay closed. And the Voyager's final radio message takes on a new, horrifying meaning when you know the full context of Project Blue Horizon's coded terminology. All is well. Proceeding as scheduled, they weren't reassuring the outside world. They were reporting success to their handlers. Whatever they summoned aboard that ship didn't just take 400 souls. It's still using them, still growing, still waiting for the next resonance spike to hatch. The official case of the SS Celestial Voyager may be closed, but the questions left behind are louder than any ghost ship's echo. We'll never know why the ship's butcher insisted the cold storage lockers were full of meat that hadn't been loaded, or why the Navy incinerated the contents before inventory could be taken. We'll never know why the FBI confiscated every mirror from the ship before its scrapping, nor why one agent's handwritten note simply read, "Reflections still active." The truth about cabin 317 died with the crew. No blueprints listed, no passenger manifest assigned anyone to it. Yet multiple witnesses, from Mercer to Grayson, described its flooded interior and the thing that watched them through the peephole. Was it a secret lab? A containment chamber? Or something far older, something that wanted to be found when the ship's steel began singing? We'll never understand the final scribbled phrase in Father Callahan's journal. "This vessel is not a ship. It is a throat." Did he mean a passageway? A feeding mechanism? The priest took that answer to his grave, if he was even given one. His body was listed among the recovered, yet funeral home records show his casket arrived nailed shut and filled with 200 pounds of ballast sand. The children's drawings haunt the most. Found tucked behind a panel in the nursery, they depicted the same scene over and over. A smiling black sun with tendrils reaching into the ocean, surrounded by stick figures holding hands beneath the waves. None of the parents recognized the imagery. But in 1987, the same symbol was found carved into a bulkhead of the Marine Sulphur Queen, another vanished ship built with Tyneside steel. We'll never explain the 23-year cycle. Why that interval? Why do compasses fail and radios pick up static-laden whispers every 23 years along the Voyager's last route? The pattern holds: 1954, 1977, 2000, and now 2023's early tremors. Is it a breeding cycle? A migration path? Or something keeping time in ways we can't comprehend? The identities of the returnees remain unknowable. Are they mimics wearing dead faces? Hallucinations given flesh? The Tampa hospice patient who claimed to be Howard Grayson knew things only Grayson could. The combination to his 1953 office safe. The nickname he called his mistress. But when doctors drew his blood, the sample moved on its own in the vial. Most of all, we'll never learn what truly happened between 2:17 a.m. and dawn on October 16, 1954. The ship's clocks all stopped at 3:04. The bridge recorder's final wax cylinder holds only 47 seconds of a sound like wet fabric tearing. And the single life preserver found floating 200 miles off course in 1998 wasn't faded by decades of sun and salt. It looked freshly stained, as if just dropped by a fleeing hand. The ocean keeps its secrets better than any government. All we have are the echoes, the nightmares, and the unshakable sense that out there in the dark water something is still counting, still waiting, still hungry. The U.S. Navy officially decommissioned the Celestial Voyager in 1955, cutting it apart for scrap in a Norfolk shipyard under armed guard, but the steel refused to die. Workers reported nightmares after handling the metal, visions of drowning in airless blackness, of hearing laughter from inside sealed compartments. One welder claimed his torch ignited blue flames that burned underwater as he sliced through the hull, the smoke smelling of violets and rotting meat. The final inventory lists were never completed. Over 30% of the ship's mass simply vanished between dismantling and smelting. Yet the Voyager's legacy lived on in the recycled steel. In 1962, a Brooklyn bridge built with metal from the ship collapsed, killing 14 workers. The official reports cited faulty engineering, but survivors described the girders twisting like they were alive moments before the fall. In 1989, a Virginia foundry producing engine parts from the last Voyager ingots was abandoned when molten metal began forming humanoid shapes in the molds. The most disturbing afterlife emerged in 2001, when maritime historians traced a section of the hull to a Taiwanese cargo ship, the WWII. On its maiden voyage, the crew mutinied after hearing knocking from inside the walls. Salvagers found the WWII adrift off the Philippines, its radio broadcasting a loop of the Voyager's final transmission. The ship's cat, the only living thing aboard, had chewed off its own tail. Perhaps the Voyager never truly sank because it was never truly a ship, not in the way we understand. Maybe it was always something else wearing steel like a skin, something that simply molted. Because in 2020, deep-sea explorers mapping the Puerto Rico Trench found a wreck at 28,000 feet, too deep for any known vessel. The blurry sonar images show a liner-shaped silhouette, but with abnormalities, too many portholes, hull plates that appear to breathe, and something massive coiled around the stern. The coordinates match where the Voyager's bell was found in 2023. Still ringing, still calling, still hungry. And in October 2024, When the next 23-year cycle peaks, perhaps we'll finally learn the truth. Some ships don't sail the ocean sails them. The story of the Celestial Voyager doesn't end here. It lives on in the questions we still can't answer. What really happened to those 400 souls? Why does the ocean keep giving up clues decades later? And what will happen when the next 23-year cycle peaks in 2024? This is where you come in. If you've ever had a strange experience at sea, unexplained sounds, missing time, reflections that moved on their own, we want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments below. Maybe your grandfather sailed on a ship that vanished. Maybe you've seen something in old family photos that doesn't belong. Every detail could be the missing piece that unlocks this mystery. And if you crave more dark histories, forgotten tragedies, and real-life horrors hiding in plain sight, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. Next week, we're diving into the Dyatlov Pass incident, but with newly uncovered documents that change everything. You won't want to miss it. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload, because the truth, it's still out there, and together, we're going to find it. Until then, keep watching the waves, and whatever you do, don't answer the knocking.